The truth of it is that if the individual humans involved in these bureaucratic erections, all of these idols to political order and whatnot, if you have people of the right character, they can serve their purpose, and they can serve their purpose well. As a population of people just simply continues to just tell people what they want to hear and make everything about feelings and not about standards, it doesn't matter. The structure can't save you. Only God can save you.
We're back, buddy.
How's it
Cheers,
going?
man. Good
Cheers.
seeing you. I figured you'd be a little more tanner since last time that I saw you.
Cheers with beers.
Yeah. You must not wear a mask. You don't have that whole... you ever seen any of those yet? Guys that have the mask
the mask tan?
Mask hands?
Yeah.
I saw a couple. I was at the Mall of America yesterday. I swear to God, I saw a few masked hands.
They might be males, but they're not men.
Phil, people want to follow the science. Science says we don't have to wear masks anymore, but people still wear the masks. They don't want to give them up, dude. No, they don't. It was a nice security blanket. They're even making people who are fully vaccinated still wear the masks.
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, people are going to be writing books about the psychological damage done by this for decades.
I think it's more so about control than anything else now.
Absolutely.
Control that people want to have on the general public, people you could say on the same level as them. I remember a lady was telling me she was at the store a few weeks ago and she didn't have a mask on, and some random person doesn't even work there goes, "Put on your mask, you cunt."
Oh,
yeah. Real polite about it.
That sounds accurate
Yeah.
when it comes to the mindset of the people that are just they don't want to let go of their role as an unpaid agent of the state. And you say, well, why would anyone do that without getting paid? Well, it's one of the fundamental principles of economy is that it doesn't have anything to do with money. These people, they're generating a benefit for themselves in their heads, which is where all profit is. So when the state comes along with one of these signaling rituals or compliance procedures to deal with whatever their pointy-headed white coats have come up with recently, they generate satisfaction through going along with it, so that anybody that's not in line with their way of thinking is an automatic target for them to go after. Now, when your attitude towards living is fundamentally based on how do I extract from others, that's the kind of behavior
shit
you're
that happens.
Witness.
There's people walking up to random people, calling them cunts and making them put their mask on, and then going home and feeling like a hero about it. Telling their family, like, yeah, I saw this lady walking around, the grocery store without a mask. I let her know. I told that bitch, you put your mask on. She's out here not giving a fuck about any of us.
Yeah, well,
how ignorant. What up, Anthony?
The beginning of this country and the supposed founding on the concepts of freedom and liberty and whatnot. It doesn't matter if you actually win the political day. Most of the population still doesn't want it.
Right.
And we've proven that. Most people do not want it. They don't want. See, freedom is knowing that you are not going to be interfered with by third parties while, morally interacting with the individuals around you to confront the obstacles that the actual world presents on a daily basis.
I think to me it's showed that how many Americans like being told what to do. Like they all need this sense of guidance. And they look to the government to give them that guidance. They look to the government to give them those type of rules to follow. And you could make an argument that some of it is structure. Does the government provide structure at all, Phil? to general public?
Not really.
They should, though. That should be their job. It's providing some structure to people's lives, I think.
No. The manifestation of the desire of the people that rebelled against the crown. Now, if you go into the occult history and stuff, you'll get the narratives about how everybody involved is co-opted, and that very well might be. Taking it at face value, the documents that they wrote, and the amount of effort, the amount of planning, the amount of sacrifice involved in the people that actually participated in throwing the crown out. Where in the world was I just going with it? The idea wasn't, it was to allow the productive capacities of people to freely interact with each other, because the entire experience of the world up to that point was simply a parasitic relationship between whoever the political power holders were or religious dogma givers. There's just always this structure of people who somehow exist above everybody else.
Yep. And the general public now wants to put themselves in that structure.
Yeah,
and putting themselves above other people. Like, I hate it. Like, I think for businesses, all right, from a business standpoint, you have to make everyone wear the masks or don't have anyone wear it at all. Because what ends up happening now is you have these businesses around here in Minnesota that they will say they encourage people to wear a mask, but they're not going to enforce it. I've seen a lot of signs like that now. Say, hey, we encourage you wearing a mask, but governor doesn't require us to anymore, right? Well, now you have some people that are walking around with these giant fucking Godzilla gas masks on, and they look around at people. If you don't have your mask, like you have 6 heads and shit, and you're already creating just this really bad type of like a vibe and just like energy, especially like in the restaurant business, where I work at, where you got half the people wearing masks, half the people aren't wearing masks, and it's just bad vibes, dude, all around is the best way that I can explain it.
Well, it's a known fundamental operating precept of any position of power. Machiavelli was one that elucidated it the best up to that point in time.
Machiavelli?
Yeah.
Was that Tupac?
Yeah. Tupac in 15th century Italy or whenever it was. But, all he did is point out the reality. He didn't formulate some demonic practice. He just realized, this is how you describe what people in political authority actually go through.
Mm-hmm.
And it's extremely demented, because if you're operating in a position where the number one priority is maintaining order in a population, there's no way to avoid just absolutely obliterating individuals. So, you end up in these situations where you basically present a completely false narrative in order to convince people not to do something or to do something. And you always end up having to lie to everybody.
What happened to following the science, though, Phil? We're not following the science anymore. Otherwise, if we were following the science, no one would have their masks on.
If anything that we're going on in this contemporary time period, we're actually following the science, nothing would be as it is. Nothing.
Why is that?
Well, you've had numerous examples out there of people developing prototypes that would be, if they were to be implemented on a wide scale, would provide tremendous benefits to the population at large. They're sequestered, they're lied about, they're destroyed. The people who make them are killed. So there are giant improvements that have been basically you just scream right past them on the political road, because they don't serve the interests of the the entities that
They don't
fuel-
serve the interests of the general public or the ordinary person.
Whenever you have positions of political power, there will be favors handed out that will develop other entities that essentially guaranteed the continued function of this corrupt structure, where it's essentially you have the masses, you have people with ideas, and then you have people with power to pick and choose between the ideas. See, we don't live in a market environment where the best ideas actually get out into the ether. They just don't. Because there are people that have established relationships with the power positions, and neither side wants to, they don't want to introduce any uncertainty as to where are these connections going to be. That's why the birth of the internet and the YouTubers and all of the crazy shit that's gone on all of these online outlets and the social media platforms over the past 20 years has resulted in the reconstituting of basically what is it now? Like a six-headed monster? It's the exact same pattern. You came out of the 19th century where the biggest boon to like the communication of information was the telegraph, and then the telephone was there, but it wasn't. The telegraph had so many years before the telephone. So you get to this point, you've got the telephone and you've got the beginning of the automobile. You've already got the steam engines working up and down the rivers and across the oceans. And the ability of people to compete. I mean, you can go back and you can look at the history of the railroads and how people manipulated the frickin' county and state governments to get their carve-outs. Now, the federal government basically recruited all of the former all the Civil War troops to basically just jump on board and clear, a 100-mile wide path across the entire continent, just wiping everything out in order for a handful of railroad barons to create the transnational railroad or Trans-Pacific. And, you can see how it was already just absolutely corrupted in that sense. But all of these other places where, there wasn't a technology that was, completely throwing everything up in the air. And the competition was among individuals just trying to generate enough to survive. And de Tocqueville wrote extensively about it when he visited the United States. It was something he couldn't believe.
Who the hell is that?
Alexis de Tocqueville. He was a French political scientist or philosopher or whatever, but he wrote a book,
A scientist and a philosopher.
on democracy
And political.
He visited the United States. I think it was in the early 1860s. Maybe in the 1850s, before the Civil War. But he came over here and he traveled around and saw, for the most part, small towns where, groups of farmers basically centered their activities, farmers and cattle raisers and stuff like that. And there were no authorities anywhere. You had one guy in the town that would wear a silver star or something. He's the guy that the people in the town had the most faith in to be the one to stand up for how they do things.
Yeah.
Right?
Have integrity.
And so
hold people accountable.
And since they knew that person personally and had already measured their character, whenever it came time to serve as a recruit, to actually do something about a group of people who did not want to go with their way of doing things, they were all more than willing. And they all had a frickin' rifle on the wall, and they all got on their horses and they rode out to wherever it was and they took care of shit.
Is there less crime back then during the cowboy era? What years did you say, in the 1860s?
Just the entire 19th century.
Compared to now? Way less crime.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that has anything to do with people owning guns, Phil?
Oh, yeah. The general arming of a population prevents a lot of crime. And that's why you don't don't see the remote parts of red states experiencing high crime because most of the people know each other and they're all armed to the teeth. Nobody's going to go out. You think you want to take your Escalade with your 30-inch rims and, basically rubber layer tires or whatever the hell these stupid things are. Take that fucker out into the middle of rural Minnesota somewhere and go try to gangbang or whatever. You're not going to last very long.
Now in the country, you got them country boys shooting at you.
You are not going to last because you don't know how to survive out there. Your entire way of doing things is preying on people who live in an area where production and population are concentrated because it's the only place your way of doing things can actually survive. So now you see how the, political authorities and their dictating of where people come and go and everything is essentially rounding up the cattle and the sheep so that the wolves can actually have members of the group sacrificed to them on a regular basis. Now, Tocqueville comes here and he sees the way we operated, the way people operated in the dispersed population area. He couldn't even believe it. He said, these people, they're different. And he's comparing these people to the metropolitan types of Europe, right? He says, they're not cultured like us. They don't have, an extensive history or knowledge of a lot of different history, but they know a handful of things about their history, and they know what their lives on that land they know what that's about, and they can tell you the narrative that led to it. And, they might not be cultured. They don't have theater. And they don't have all this extraneous bullshit.
Theater's fucking boring.
But do you know what they do have? They have
guns.
They have solid nuclear families that work land, actually produce goods. They trade with each other, and towns communicate with each other and trade with on a town level
with other towns.
And there's nobody dictating anything to anyone. And he remarks on it for hundreds of pages. He's so blown away by the different overall approach to life. And it's like these, some of the conditions they face, obviously a lot rougher than living in some city in Europe or on the East Coast. But at the same time, the types of conflicts they actually deal with are weighted more to nature than they are to each other, which isn't that the basic conception of cooperating with people? Is that the whole point is that we can understand that we are alike and that in general, our ends mirror each other to some degree, so that cooperating against the thing that can at any moment wipe you out.
You want your values to be the same.
Exactly. And to be focused on what is to be confronted and overcome are the perils of nature. This idea that you need to save the environment from people is, we necessarily have to change the environment. So that position is just nonsensical. The only logical conclusion to it is to exterminate people. Because the conception of the environment that you have in your head is this pristine place with cartoon animals that talk to each other, remarking about how great their way of life. It's like the animals don't know. They don't consciously. They're animals. They're meat robots. They have the things they do, and they always do them.
They appreciate nature, dude.
They don't change anything about how they do things to modify the environment. They have a set.
No, I'm sure, dude, certain animals change things based off what like the season, the weather, what's going on in the seasons.
Beavers make dams.
Yeah.
Beavers make dams.
Angry beavers.
They change the environment. No.
Insects.
They don't.
Insects change the environment a lot, dude.
Beavers do not know that they're building a dam they don't know anything.
Beavers are rodents, aren't they?
Do Whales swim in the ocean. Birds fly in the air. They don't contemplate anything. They don't make any choices. They just react. See, even when they're talking about how animals can communicate with each other, they can emote and they can signal, right? They can make a noise in response to a physical stimulus.
But they're able to communicate in the sense of, like, look at wolves. Look how certain animals work together in packs together.
Yeah.
You know, they may not actually speak a language, but they have ways to communicate.
I'm not saying that they don't communicate, but all of it is purely reactionary.
Does it matter if they understand what the other wolf or animal is trying to tell them?
Just having a reaction program doesn't require understanding. What requires understanding is description and argumentation. Like description. If I tell you about a blue box that's so big, that's in a room, in a building, at an address, in a town, you have to understand all of those levels of each item of description in order to
identify it.
Go to the place and find the right box. I mean, what if it's in a room of 1 million boxes that are all different colors and there's only one blue one? Well, you have to know what blue is to find the box.
What shade of blue? Is it sky blue? Is it ocean blue?
That's another level.
Is it balls blue?
Description requires understanding. 1, to formulate the description. 2, to receive it and have any value to the description. And then argumentation is another level entirely. And those are the two that make humans human as far as communication goes. Now, when animals are communicating, it's a formulaic chain reaction that just never stops. And it's just the same set of reactions over and over and over. It never changes.
No, I think some animals choose, dude. I would say... What about monkeys? One of the more intelligent types of animals. You say they have a consciousness?
Animals aren't intelligent.
What? Animals aren't intelligent?
No. They follow their blueprint. Humans are the only species with a will. And nobody can demonstrate that an animal has a will.
Humans are the only animal. Humans are the only species with will. But you can't say that. Just because you don't have will, does that mean you don't have intelligence then, too?
What you're saying? I would say that, will is not necessarily a measure of intelligence.
Okay.
There's too many stupid people running around. But,
because you can teach a monkey things. You can teach animals to do a lot of things. There's ways you can communicate. There's things that you can teach animals that isn't just reactionary. There's more going on in some animals' brains. Sure, maybe not all. Maybe like fucking little like pigeons. Sure, all they do is they fly around and they shit on people's cars. But I think certain animals like dogs, I think monkeys, I would use dolphins, dude. Certain sea animals, dude. You can really train and get them to do like backflips and all sorts of shit. That's not reactionary. Yeah, when you hold a fish up to a dolphin and it does a fucking backflip, it just doesn't react. People taught it. People trained it to do that. There's some form of intelligence going on in there that they were able to learn that and learn what their trainer was telling them, at least communicating with them. Oh, right? Right?
What do you gain?
So animals are intelligent.
Let me ask the question here. What does anybody gain from anthropomorphizing animals?
What does that mean? Humanizing them, basically?
Granting them exclusively human qualities, like intelligence.
I think it grants people a more personal connection to them.
And why would you want to do that?
Because people want animals as friends.
To detract from people's attachment or recognition of each other.
No.
Well, it's really weird because you've got all sorts of groups of people calling other groups of people animals. So, I don't know. Maybe we should pursue the smart animal thing even further. Sure, it'll result in great.
My point was going into all that is you said not animals are all reactionary and not intelligent, and I'm telling you they're not. If you can train an animal to do you
think the basis of training an animal is? Is that through repetition and a disciplined schedule of pounding it into their head, you can change their reactions so that it's then a different reaction Still reaction. They didn't learn anything.
Yeah, they did.
No, they respond differently because you change the scenario from how they originally reacted, and then you modify it to force them to do something else, and all they do is react.
No, because I bet not every animal would be able to react in the same way.
Oh, well, a lot of animals cannot be trained.
Yeah.
That's true. But trainability is not intelligence.
It's obedience.
Hey, I've watched millions of people who were trained to wear these fucking masks. That to me is a sign of a lack of intelligence, especially when you have all of these other things that you could go and look at to prove to yourself that it's utter nonsense. The people who are trained that way have no motivation to go looking for any of that because their reaction is the pointy head and the white coat said
science.
I voted for that guy. It must be true. I would say those actually, this plays into something that I go over a lot. And it's the idea that humanity is progressing is such a joke. I mean, all of this stuff points to the degeneration of humanity, which if you have any foundations for your way of thinking about anything, you have to know that's the Bible narrative, that man is created perfect. He uses his will to deny, to go against God's instruction, and it's just been a downhill spiral ever since. And I think we're proving it. We're proving it right now. I mean, look at the ridiculous practices that we've begun to develop. I mean, you can't even speak to people in just normal parlance and expect them to even be civil. Like, I mean, if you talk
about not wanting to wear a mask or not getting vaccine, you can't.
It's even worse than that. I mean, that whole thing, that's just, I mean, to a huge degree, that's just a lot of fear. There are some people that just like being able to go around and nitpick everybody like a scolding mother.
Yeah.
Weird that everybody's just behaving more and more like, a woman that they are annoyed with, yet they act that way. It's really irritating.
I identify as a scolding mother.
If you're in a particular environment and you don't use he or she correctly, you might get gang murdered.
I think that's a small percentage, though. I think that's a very small percentage.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, like not using he or she popularly and people wanting to just fucking chop your head off for it. I'm not saying that doesn't exist.
I mean,
I think it's a very small radical group that feels and believes that.
Well,
I'm friends with I'm friends with a good amount of transgender people and like gay people, and not a single one of them has gotten mad at me, corrected me on the type of fucking pronouns that I use when I'm speaking to him or her. That's me personally, I'm sure you have too. You're a bartender. Like, we work a lot in the service, like being in the service industry. I would say we probably anyone in a customer service job probably interacts with, a transgender or gay person more than, someone just working a fucking 9-to-5 would. And even at the bar, I've never had someone, attack me or gotten mad at me for using the wrong pronoun when speaking with them. Have you? Can you think of one? I feel like I would like I would remember it.
I mean, personally, if it's if it's a coworker or it's a regular customer, when I was in that environment working at Williams, I just spoke in a way that made it impossible for them to do that.
I always wondered about guys, because I call groups of girls guys. I think guys is gender neutral when you're speaking to multiple people.
For the generally sane population, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
It's only once you become a schizophrenic political identity person that you start freaking out at shit like that. Yeah. I mean, it's like...
You want another drink or?
Yeah, I can just go for another one.
No, keep going, Phil. We're listening. The schizophrenia.
Well, I mean, words come into and, exit from common usage all the time, and that their accepted meaning changes over time, and it happens with all sorts of words. So just because of your particular feelings on an issue or whatever, to then generate some kind of a my world is ending attitude towards people addressing a group as guys. I mean, if you ever observe that, the person that's finding that intense offense at somebody just speaking normally, that person has a severe mental illness. Yeah. You have to. I mean, I feel bad. I really do. I feel pity for the people that are trapped in these psychological regimes. And I wish I could do a better job of confronting it with the people when I interact with them in a way where I wouldn't
it's really
wouldn't make their entire psyche implode because I'm questioning something.
It's really difficult because it's almost like if they're waiting for you to slip up on a word and then they attack you for it. Yeah. They're pounce on it.
Which is just another display of the mental illness. If you're really about trying to sort through ideas and like make steps in conclusion building using reasoning, when you're engaging with somebody in that kind of a mental activity, the words, you have to be able to speak freely.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, how do you ever arrange anything within a regime of meaning that actually represents anything? How do you do it? Basically, once that's gone, all you have are people with positions and everybody else afraid of them. And we all know that's not a framework for understanding anything other than how recognizing positions of elevation or power or whatever put everybody else in fear. And that is never the basis upon which anyone should ever act.
Right.
Now, it's not to say that you don't have an inherent fear response, but to make that the general condition for operating in the realm of ideas and understanding, no wonder so many people are just basically exceeding their warranty dates and they're just falling apart. Oh, let me juxtapose this with how people approach me. Like Jay.
Okay. Like who?
Jay.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Damn, he's name dropping.
Well, I'm sure he has absolutely no problem telling the entire world he thinks the Bible's nonsense.
No, he doesn't.
He's an atheist, right?
Yeah.
He's an atheist, and he believes in billions of years and all that stupid shit, right? Now, I know him, and I know that he enjoys the back and forth.
Yeah.
Right? So I know that I can issue a statement to him like, the Bible is the single most coherent historical document that there is available. And when you go back in time, there are more and more copies being discovered that reinforce the consistency of what is in there. And it is a concrete narrative upon which to base your view of history. It's the single best one. There's nothing else that even comes close. You take any of the ancient like the ancient Grecian narratives or whatever. What's the largest number of copies of any of that stuff that you think are available to people to study?
For what, Bibles or?
No, for like Greece, like the history of the Greeks.
Who knows? Probably a few hundred. What, 50?
Not even
10?
Over 10.
Over 10? Okay.
That's less than 24.
Jeez.
And most of them, there's only one. There is no reinforcing copy that a student or a younger relative of reproducing the stuff. None of it. But what do you find with the Bible? not only are all of the books in the Bible represented in almost innumerable copies going all the way back to the times of Moses, when the first dictation of the first 5 books was actually given to him. And they have shown that the copies are so in line with each other that there basically are no differences in the copies. Not real differences. Superficial differences are all over the place because people make all sorts of mistakes all the time.
You're saying the storyline, the story and the points that they're trying to, like, they're getting across and the lessons that are being taught are still the same. Just they're maybe reiterated with each one.
Yeah, and there are instances where the use of certain words did, for whatever reason, get overturned.
Yeah.
And I do think that there are some errors that people have made, but most of those concern the depiction of the requirement of God's supernatural acts in the material realm, that people just don't want to have to deal with that. So they kind of brush it away by using a different word. And these dozens and dozens of modern translations where they're trying to inject a political point of view about how a certain group of people is labeled, blah, blah, blah. All of that shit. Yeah. That's the stuff that these people should be going after, not what has been handed down over the centuries, because you could go back and you can line that stuff up. And thousands of these guys have done this. And they over and over again, they find the same thing. And one of the most famous critics of the handing down of the biblical writings and other books accompanying the biblical writings, it's not insulated to that one thing. But he said he's straight up about it. These numbers, these millions of differences that people are finding within the pages of these books, they're all superficial.
Yeah.
They do not change the meaning of the narrative at all. And so it's a false flag. It's a false flag operation that these people have been perpetuating.
And are they doing that to convert more people to atheism by rewriting it and waving around this false flag? Because you got to think, the more times the Bible gets rewritten, that's more reason for an atheist to say, oh, look, it's bullshit. It's nonsense. They rewrote it again.
I know.
Even though the actual substance of it is still the same since the original copy.
Yeah, yeah. Juxtapose that with something that is literally amazing. These people, they talk about evolution and Darwin having never read Origin of the Species, and the stuff they have in their head is so mutated and expanded beyond the scope of his work, they have no idea. Yet the Bible's full of garbage. Their own basis for what they think on a day-to-day basis. I reused the word basis. That was terrible. But that framework that they have in their head is completely unsupported by anything, because that's not what was in the work that they say they're basing their thinking on. And they certainly didn't look at anything he wrote in the aftermath or leading up to his death. It's really sad. It's really sad.
How many times has the Bible been rewritten right now? I could probably look it up, actually. Maybe I'll do that quick here. You want to take a shot at it while I'm looking out?
Well, if you're talking about, since the death and resurrection
of Christ. Yeah.
You had people that wrote the 4 Gospels were all within 60 years. St. Paul's writings were within a dozen years, maybe 2 dozen years. I think 50s AD. Paul is, riding around all over the place, writing these letters. And
here, there's a little 2-minute YouTube video we could watch, how the Bible has changed over the past 2,000 years.
What's the channel?
Well,
this is just okay. It's
yeah,
just a
but
print
it
thing.
is a YouTube video. I don't. Will this bring me to the link? If I just click on it, can I open? No. Should we check it out? Maybe it's on Facebook. Here, we'll see if we can pull this up for you guys. Display screen. There we go. Everyone should be able to see it now. We'll full screen it. Headphones on.
Yeah,
Volume,
I just read
volume up.
I just read the text underneath there. What's really remarkable to me is that, okay, what would be more amazing? Finding an actual like embossed, like basically carved into granite first edition of the Bible.
That'd be.
Scrawled on the inside of a cave somewhere.
Do they have a first edition of the Bible?
Or would it be reassembling over time thousands upon thousands of copies of the same books that all agree with each other?
Probably the
latter.
first one.
The latter is far more amazing.
Right. Okay.
That people were so dedicated to passing on the truth about these things that no matter how many times people copied it over, it remained consistent. That's the amazing thing.
Let's check this video out. Let me know if it's too loud, Anthony. Everyone else in the chat. Or not loud enough.
I mean,
The
this is
Bible
going
is
to be
the most
absolute
widely read
garbage.
book in the history
I
of
can
the
already tell ya.
world, far outselling any other book, with 3.9 billion copies sold over
Ooh,
the past
a lot of
50
copies.
years. Many believe it contains the actual Word of God. But many people don't realize that over the past 2,000 years, this sacred text has
Oh.
changed a great deal.
Oh.
No first edition exists. Well, we have our
No
copies,
first
the
edition
first of which
exists?
were
Is that
made
true?
Hundreds of years after the events supposed.
No first edition exists anywhere?
No, the Bible is a collection of writings from dozens of different people.
Oh, we have our copies, Phil. Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
supposedly took place. For the first 100 to 200 years, copies of the Bible were made by hand
Yeah.
and not by professionals.
Mm.
This led to many errors, omissions, and most importantly, changes. Here are the three biggest. The earliest manuscripts of the Gospel of John did not include Jesus challenging the mob that was about to stone a woman by saying, "Let any among you who are without sin cast the first stone." In fact, the story was inserted into the book of John somewhere around 200 to 300 years later. Bill Warren, scholar at the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, told NPR, "The early church canonized books and not stories. So when it had authentic stories from Jesus in the oral tradition, they had to find a way to put it in the text." In the Gospel of Mark, we learn
So
about
just
how
pause.
Jesus rose from the tomb.
So basically, the presentation of that point didn't mean anything.
What do you mean?
It's,
Hold on, let me hold on.
Yeah,
let
just
me
go
let me,
back.
yeah, hold
I
on.
mean, it's
Yeah,
like, okay.
let me watch. Let me listen to this. Let me listen to this part again.
Jesus challenging the mob that
Okay, a little bit back here. Go right here.
this led to many errors, omissions, and most importantly, changes. Here are the three biggest. The earliest manuscripts
first
of the
change.
Gospel of John did not include Jesus challenging the mob that was about to stone a woman by saying, "Let any among you who are without sin cast the first stone." In
Okay.
fact, the story was inserted into the book of John somewhere around 200 to 300 years later.
Okay.
Bill Warren, scholar at the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, told NPR, "The early church canonized books and not stories. So when it had authentic stories from Jesus
I'm sorry. What does canonized mean?
canonized means the church leadership would gather for things like called councils, and those are the times when they would make decisions like this
Okay.
about, and I think
So a group.
the first assemblage of the Christian Bible might have been in the second century, but this compilation of all these books into one thing is not how these people did things. The writing of a person was known as the writing of that person. Like the Jews, the Israelites, they brought the Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. They brought that forward with them as the 5 books given to us by Moses. And each of the other parts that are now part of the Old Testament, they're referenced as the writings of this guy, or they're they're subsequent inspired books about those periods, but they're of people who were known by them to be true prophets. So
Martha says canons are something that everyone agrees on, a certain story or text.
yeah, I mean, it is. It's like an official list. Now,
So that was a story that was discovered by this Bill Warren guy, and then he went on and then presented it to these groups of like.
no, Bill Warren is the guy that's trying to poke holes in the Bible.
Okay,
And I don't know.
Bill
why,
Warren's not a good guy.
but
Okay,
I mean,
world today?
I don't. The way they're presenting this, it's like, okay, so it's a big conspiracy because that wasn't in the original written version, which you don't know if that's true. Listening to this garbage, Business Insider.
Fair.
What the hell is their interest in the continuity and consistency of the Bible? They don't give a shit.
They just want the views, dude. They want the clout.
Now,
That's what
the only thing I could think, just off the top of my head, because I don't, I'm not a professional, and that stupid thing with they weren't professionals. You know how many of the great scientific discoveries of the 20th century were made by the professionals supposedly being paid to research it? Almost zero. Most discoveries are made by accident by people who are actually trying to get other shit done, and it happens by accident. I would say that because of the Christians' faith and knowledge about who Jesus Christ was, and maybe John did not witness this event and didn't write it down, but because of the narrative being presented and its consistency with who they knew Jesus to be, when they come across, maybe that is what happened. But where in the world does that make? What's the protest?
Where in the world? How does that make the Bible rewritten? Is what you're saying?
Yeah. What's the protest?
Yeah. What's the problem with
about adding a story
that was
they
missed?
They have faith in that
Right.
eyewitness
That was
account
correct.
that was discovered later on. That's consistent with the way
Sure.
with who Jesus
Yep.
was and how he acted, and it serves. It serves as it's illustrative
Right.
to individuals how to behave towards one another.
But with this narrative that they're pushing, that them adding that story is actually
Yeah, it's some kind of a manipulation.
Yeah, making you think like the Bible is a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
I'll say. We'll
They
finish
had
the
to
rest
find
out
a way
here.
to put it in the text.
On Gospel of Mark,
In the
next
Gospel of
change.
Mark, we learn about how Jesus rose from the tomb on the third day and appeared to various people, including his disciples. In original manuscripts of Mark, this part of the story is nowhere to be found. Warren says scribes were seeing the other Gospels with resurrection stories, so they felt adding a resurrection story in Mark would round out the text better. In the
So it originally was put in there, and then scribes were seeing the other Gospels with the resurrection stories. So they felt like adding in a resurrection story would, in Mark, round out the text better. So they're finding consistencies in other scribes, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
They're finding consistencies in other scribes, so they wanted to put one in the Bible that originally wasn't there.
Warren says,
Do you want to know
original
what's
man-
really fascinating about this stuff? Just think about it.
I'm thinking.
You're confronted. You're confronted with the possible the true reality of existence, that God created us. We rebelled. We created sin, and the only way that debt could be paid back would be by God himself. So he becomes man, is born on earth as Jesus Christ. He lives a perfect, sinless life, dies on the cross at the hands of the people he was sent to, and opens up the covenant of God to every other person who will ever live afterward. And that message, that narrative manages to pass on from generation to generation to generation, all the way up to today. And now you've got this guy, Bill Warren, today.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know what he's done to show this? He wants us to believe that he's telling the truth about people that were writing about the ultimate truth. It's always bizarre to me. It's like, I'm the one telling the truth. I'm the one telling the truth. You don't really know what I've done to establish that, blah, 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 blah. Magic paper, fake money train, mass media. Bible is full of shit. Yeah. I mean, it's just that's the way all of their criticisms are constructed. They all collapse in on themselves. So,
are you familiar with this?
We're
going to
look
guy?
up. That's what we're going to do next. We're going to watch the rest of this video, and then we're going to go look up Bill Warren.
Look up Bill Warren.
Yeah.
Manuscripts of Mark, this part of the story is nowhere to be found. Warren says scribes were seeing the other Gospels with resurrection stories, so they felt adding a resurrection story in Mark would round out the text.
I like how it just says Bill Warren.
Yeah, Bill
says.
Warren says.
That's it. He said it.
Dr. Fauci
Got him.
says.
Yup, he said it.
Barack Obama said, "Changey, changey, hopey, hopey." Fucking
Better.
oh.
In the Gospel of Luke,
Gospel of
Jesus'
Saint Luke.
dying plea for his executioners to be forgiven, for they know not what they are doing, was not originally intended to describe the actions of the Romans. According to Bart D. Ehrman, the author of Misquoting Jesus, the story behind who changed the Bible and why, in earlier versions it was meant to refer to the Jewish leaders.
Ehrman.
Do you like this guy?
Ehrman is the one who pulled the veil off of the millions of errors shit. He's the one that he's not an apologist for Christianity. He's an attacker. He sees Christianity as opposition to what he does. But he was actually honest enough to come out after millions of books this guy sold. And he comes out and he I can't remember if he wrote another book or if he just started doing talks about it, but the guy has come out and he's been honest that basically all of these differences in the copies, they're all superficial. None of them are substantial. And yeah, when you have thousands of copies of things and you count up all of the typos that don't agree with all of the copies, there's going to be a ton of them.
There's going to be
revisions. But they don't mean anything. Anyway.
Who had sentenced him to death. He told NPR this was a problem for Christians in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, who believed God hadn't forgiven the Jews and still blamed them for killing Jesus. So it was taken out, only to be added centuries later and changed to reference the Romans. As recently as the 1940s, when the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, we discovered a version of the Old Testament containing alternate versions of various books, including the Book of Samuel. Scholars continue to argue about many aspects of the Bible and how it's changed over the centuries.
Boy, he kind of blows by a really interesting point at the end there. Yeah, there are all sorts of copies of stuff that do actually completely disagree. Those are thrown out outright.
Bill Warren? That was his name, right? Is this the dude?
Who knows? What was the...
Bill Warren was an American film historian, critic, and one of the leading authors.
No, that's...
authorities on science fiction.
Dude, there's got to be a million freaking... Okay.
Let me click on this actual video again.
Yeah, you got to find the university that he's supposedly doing this out of.
Yeah.
Which is usually another good indicator you're not dealing with somebody who's being honest.
No, fucking misclicked and then showed Donald Trump taking pictures of women there for a second. Okay, bear with me, guys. Bear with me. We're gonna skip again a little bit. All we have are copies, blah blah blah. Okay, here should say it after John. This is another Bill Warren, but it just says his name. I'm pretty sure.
No, it has the university listed. It shows up in the upper left hand corner.
Scholar.
New Orleans
Okay.
Baptist Theological Seminary.
Okay, I'm gonna leave this up. Bill Warren, New Orleans Baptist.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do New Orleans Baptist. Dr. Bill Warren.
Professor of New Testament and Greek. Okay.
Okay. Should we do this one right here?
Yeah, why not?
Look at this guy.
Okay. Textual criticism, history of the Bible, social settings of the New Testament, synoptic gospels, Greek grammar and syntax. Okay.
He has his PhD in theological seminar. Okay, bio. Let me zoom in on here so you guys can see it better, chat. Bill Warren's research writing academic presentations have focused especially in the areas of the New Testament, textual criticism, and the social context of the New Testament. What's that? Koine, Greek, and Symptotic Gospels. He is the founding director of the H. Milton Haggard Center for New Testament Textual Studies, a leading North American setting for the study of New Testament Greek manuscripts. The SNTTS, not sure. What's that? SNTTS?
CNTTS?
Yeah, CNTTS, sorry. Kind of far away from the screen here.
That's got to be the Center for New Testament Textual Studies.
There
It's
you
in
go,
the line
Philly.
above.
There you go, Philly. Critical apparatus is a major textual tool for the field that provides searchable electronic database for the information from New Testament manuscripts in a format not offered elsewhere. Dr. Warren also serves on the steering committee of the International Greek New Testament Project, one of the most extensive research undertakings in the field of New Testament textual criticism.
See, this
guy has a degree.
This is the thing. This dude. Do you know that there are all sorts of people from different backgrounds that get degrees in this stuff simply so they can try to tear down the Bible?
Yeah.
Right? They don't have any interest in what the Bible is whatsoever. They want to take it out of its position as what it is and lay it on a desk next to a bunch of other old dusty books and say it's just the same thing. There's nothing about this that is special. But do you know what all of the books that they set the Bible down next to don't have?
What?
They don't have the incredible number of supporting factors for the Bible. None of them have that. They're just books that were written by individual or small groups of individuals. The Bible is
look at
written
this one.
by there's nothing that even approaches it anywhere else.
Baptist Theological Seminary, Answering God's Call.
Yeah, I'm thoroughly disgusted with all of the online presences for anything related to an actual institution of faith at all. So, New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, I don't really know how focused they are on any of that. They could just be, a fake money train rider with a Christian, with a Christian sect name slapped on it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just because you call yourself the Baptist Theological Seminary doesn't mean you're actually teaching anybody
But
about
you have
God.
all these PhDs and these magic pieces of paper, Phil, to back you up.
Yeah. Well, what's better? What's better than having, all of these entities embedded in this fabric that people all recognize as having this authority so that you can basically lie to people about what's true? I mean, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Now, and this is, watch that stupid little video. I mean, I've watched hour upon hour upon. I've never seen anybody present those differences in the Gospels.
That was the first time you've heard that one?
Specifically the first one, the Gospel of John and the cast the first stone. I don't know. Maybe he found a copy
that didn't have that in there.
That didn't have it in there, and that's what he's basing it on.
Mm-hmm.
But so I don't. How do you know? The field it's so broad, and there are so many bad actors that you see something like that. I mean, you know what that's designed for? That kind of a presentation of a difference in the scripts that doesn't really in any way provide any questioning of who Jesus Christ was. That's designed to take the weak-willed, doesn't really want to maintain the faith person and tear them away.
Martheless, LOL, that looked like something that the sect wouldn't have on their page. Yeah.
It's ridiculous the way they present this stuff. This man, what's something else that we could? I mean, there just really isn't. You can't pull up anything in the spur of the moment to deflect this stuff
Nah.
because it's so voluminous.
Well, and it's so. So I think there's just so many videos, and I'm sure like the video that we just watched of that short 2-minute, like you said, that guy probably did find a copy that didn't have those 3 things that he. It's almost like you're nitpicking, right? You're searching through all these fucking rewritten copies of the Bible and finding that one thing that it's missing and trying to use that
Well, here,
to fucking disprove every single other copy
Just
that was written before that.
do a search.
How many you've read the Bible a lot, like is there certain editions or a certain copy that you like go to?
Well, I mean,
like all because like they've been rewritten a fuck
the
ton of
easiest
times.
place to go is just the King James version.
King James. Okay.
Yeah. That is, to my knowledge, that's the most recent, like all-encompassing dedication to the translating and publication of a version of the Bible that was meant to, withstand the test of time.
My mom says some gospels were written by women but were destroyed by the so-called holy people.
There were a lot of Gnostic gospels that were, written in the pursuit of, well, in a lot of cases, just denial of Jesus' divinity. That was one of the main focuses. But then there were also groups that were looking to create new followings that were separate from the people that were actually maintaining the faith and passing it down from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So basically like a fad jumper just looking to get attention or power or whatever. Those gospels they're not relevant because they don't fulfill the characteristics, the attributes of the gospels that were included. Matthew, Mark, and Luke can, as far the last time I saw the dates on that, those were all being copied and circulated by like 60 AD or something like that. Gospel of John is later. He was the youngest of the group, and he didn't write it down supposedly until he was in exile, and that's where he wrote Revelation.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, all 4 of those, they're all within 60 years
of each other,
of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, and not to mention all of Paul's writings are from earlier than that. They're within 20 years or something. All of this extra stuff, like Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Judas, Gospel of Mary Magdalene. These were names that were lifted out of the existing Gospels, and then they created these other weird narratives, and that's why they're discounted, because they have all sorts of stuff in there that's contradictory to going from the Torah forward to the first 4 Gospels and the letters of Paul. They had all of that. That was the coherent stuff, and also the letters of the other writers, Peter, Timothy, and so on and so forth. That all of that, it was a coherent whole, and that's basically where it ended. And then you have this other pile-on, weird narrative bending, internally contradictory stuff that doesn't go along with it, and so it's thrown out. And I've seen some material recently about females in the clergy and in religious leadership and things like that, and people just don't want to accept the truth about it. They cannot bring themselves to accept the order of God in Christ, Christ in man loves woman, women love children, and that's the order. And they love to do, so they love to point to the female judges and prophets of the Old Testament. What is happening? In every one of those instances, the male leadership have basically handed their people over to Satan. They're not following God's rules anymore. And so the only people who are left to try and rescue the damn thing are the women who are still trying to hang on. So every time a woman is brought forth by God, it's after an absolute collapse of what he wanted. So this idea that women in leadership are somehow this positive thing that is just always supposed to be there and is part of what God wants, utter nonsense.
So
It's an escape hatch.
So you're saying God doesn't want women to be leaders?
There's actually, I just saw this the other day.
Is that what you're saying?
There's a passage in Romans in the New Testament, right? These are the letters to the Romans, because they're just an absolute debauched group of just sick people. There's an instruction guide on how to hand your people over. First thing you do, elevate women. And then after you elevate women, who comes next? Then you bring the homosexuals.
Is that why Hillary Clinton didn't win president?
And then after the homosexuals, you just know what comes after that. You got the trannies and the pedophiles and everything else. And it's right there. It's right there in the New Testament. It's a step-by-step guide to how to ruin your society.
And this is on the Romans wrote this.
No, St. Paul wrote this to the Romans.
St. Paul wrote that to the Romans. And who was St. Paul? The Pope? One of the popes?
No, Paul was
the gospel.
He was the first, widely traveled evangelist of Jesus Christ. He never met Jesus. He actually met Jesus in appearance on the road to Damascus. So that's when people say you're, the on the road to Damascus moment, Jesus actually appears to him, and he basically falls apart, and he pulls a complete 180, because he was a relatively well-off agent of the state who just went around persecuting the shit out of people. He was a horrible person.
I feel like you've triggered a lot of people by saying God didn't want, or what, like when you promote women up to leadership, that's how the quickest way to get disbanding your people.
That's the first step.
Yeah, that's the first step, right? And I feel like there's a lot of people that are going to hear that, they're going to get triggered. But I guess, something I never thought of, which was been right from my face. All of God's disciples, they were all men, weren't they? There wasn't a single woman out of that bunch.
Well, some people will kind of loosely associate like Mary Magdalene as the 13th apostle, but it's really not appropriate.
Yeah.
I mean, the number of references to her isn't that great. And, she
with that logic of God doesn't want women to be leaders, should there ever be a woman president?
I would say.
Oh, can you not really compare the two?
I would say that at this point, honestly, what God wants from us, it lies outside of the arbitrary structures that we've erected. The truth of it is that if the individual humans involved in these bureaucratic erections, all of these idols to political order and whatnot, if you have people of the right character, they can serve their purpose, and they can serve their purpose well. As a population of people just simply continues to just tell people what they want to hear and make everything about feelings and not about standards, it doesn't matter. The structure can't save you. Only God can save you. And, this constant roiling and just overturning these pop culture narratives about the political powers that be, it's not serving. It is not serving people the way God wants to see us treat each other. I don't know why it's so hard for people to accept that, but they're obsessed with this idea that material technology and abusing money to infinity is gonna
solve problems,
solve anything. And that's the saddest part. So my baseline at this point is read your Bible and rethink some things.
King James version.
King James version is a good place to start. I have a Catholic revised second edition. It includes Maccabees in the Old Testament. Maccabees 1 and 2 are the last two books of the Old Testament instead of it's Zechariah or Haggai. I can't remember which one it is, but yeah, like the King James version doesn't have those two books in there. And then I think there's a small piece of the New Testament that this revised second edition or second version has. You know, I would just say outside of that, I wouldn't go to any of these modern interpretations like the New International Version. That's got all sorts of flowery papering over of stuff. Any of that stuff you don't want to do that.
Is the new one like a lot more sugar coated now to not hurt people's feelings?
Oh, that's another thing.
You want to talk about the Bible?
You want to talk about people abusing the Bible? I mean, they take out and they dismantle so many of the straightforward references concerning sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty gross.
That's the one I was exactly getting at.
And that,
is it worth it though?
Isn't it strange?
I think you got to ask yourself, is it worth it after that? Is it worth taking out things saying, God doesn't want people to be homosexual if more homosexuals end up, believing in God and willing to, listen to him and let God step into their lives and save them? I think that's what you got to really ask yourself that question is removing this segment from the Bible going to help God enter more people's lives? Because having a really strong statement like that, a lot of people are going to read it and then immediately reject it.
Yeah. Well, if you're brought to an organization under the auspices of a dismantled Bible, you're not being brought to God. You're being brought to the people that dismantled the message. And when you're in the hands of people, anything can happen.
That's for sure.
People can't make the same promises that God makes. But when God makes a promise, the conditions are very specific and they're not hidden. They're there for everybody to read.
Yeah.
It's just that the way that what God wants contradicts their urges and desires and whatnot, well, they don't fit. So they're never going to do it. It takes a great deal of humility to look on your own life and say, I am not the one that knows everything. And if you're experiencing, dilemma or stress or whatever in your life, and everything that you do is point at external sources for your persecution, that's exactly when you open the Bible and start reading. Because once you're stuck in a mode where others are to blame for everything, you know what that's a direct reflection of? Satan denying his nature as being created. Well, how can you tell me?
So you blaming others for your problems.
How can you tell me that I'm created? I'm just as powerful as you. The nature of the relationship, even being the supreme created entity, there's a difference of nature that it can't be communicated to him. So it doesn't matter what you show him as proof. He's never going to believe it.
Yeah.
So translate that onto the poor sap running around in this dystopian freaking, just think, this is the most successful single integration of communism and fascism that the world has ever seen. And people think it's freedom. Now, take the poor sap who's trying to reconcile this is a free country with all of the totalitarian corral making and controls that he runs into on a moment by moment basis. And the kind of psychological pressure that puts on maintaining any kind of a consistent worldview. It's like expecting to drop a head of lettuce into the garbage disposal and just come out the end of the drain as a whole head of lettuce. No, it's never going to happen. So it's just to anybody that actually comes across somebody who says that, you have to isolate yourself from it to some degree so that you can self-evaluate and read your Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got one. You cannot go anywhere and not find a Bible. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
Everybody has one available to read. Even if you got one of these,
I don't know if we have one here.
One of
actually.
these garbage modern interpretations or translations or whatever, you can still go in there, and the parts that really matter, the ones that really matter, like the parables of Jesus and stuff, most of that stuff is still intact. So if there might be some passage somewhere that condemns homosexuality that's plastered over with some bullshit, but it's not going to hide. That can't hide the real core of it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're willing to go in there and find it, you'll be able to see for yourself where the sections are that people have fucked with, that aren't they're not consistent or coherent anymore. Then you'll go looking for that King James version.
Yep.
Or if you really get intent on developing a better understanding of it, you'll start looking for the people who go back and compare translations to the Greek Septuagint, which is funny. All of the eyewitnesses to Jesus Christ and the immediate writings thereafter, all written in Greek, the language that everybody knew, that if you wanted to give people a base for passing it on forward from that point in time, everybody was going to know what the Greek said.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was so widespread, so well established, so consistent over time that you would have a very hard time sneaking in bullshit by translating the Greek into something else. Because now, once you do that, now you've given people something to double check.
To go back.
You can go back and double check it against that Septuagint, the original Greek writing. And human beings could never have generated this efficient a methodology for passing this knowledge forward. That's why there are so many people who attack it, because they cannot accept the truth that it was possible because God did it.
That it was possible for someone to write a book however many years ago, and that book stayed true and the same all the way up to the present day.
Yeah, and
people can't accept that.
There will be people until the day of judgment denying that this was possible. It's just a bunch of stories that some guys wrote to gain. What happened to all? Do you know what happened to all of the apostles? All but one. Every single one was executed for refusing to stop. Peter was crucified upside down. A bunch of them were crucified. I think another one was burned to death. I mean, every single one of them. The only one.
And were they crucified because
John was exiled to the island of Patmos? We know that. There are multiple references.
Were they executed
because
because they felt like they were a threat? They were going to take Christianity was going to take over.
Oh yeah, well,
this was God.
I mean, after the Romans destroyed the temple and the entire city of Jerusalem in 70 AD, it became it was a preacher's free-for-all.
Mm-hmm.
But that story, everybody, the people that witnessed Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection, they were immediately telling people about it. And that story made it the entire way around the world in a handful of decades. Everywhere. There isn't anywhere that story didn't get to. Hell, there are Chinese Christians that can basically trace their ancestors back to the 1st century AD. They've been there the entire time. There are no places where people didn't get to hear about Jesus. Pure bullshit. Every time, that is one of the single most disingenuous questions that these people have managed to implant in the general psyche. Well, how can it be true if there'd be so many people who never got to learn about Jesus? First of all, there were thousands of years before Jesus where people being being told to have faith and all of this, and they never got to hear about Jesus. So anybody who was alive after Jesus who experienced the same thing would be in the same category as the people from before Jesus. So it's a stupid question to begin with. Yet it's always presented as if they're making some kind of a damaging point. Well, score one for me.
Yeah.
Well, what about the people who don't know about Jesus? Is there anywhere in the Bible that ever said every single person's going to hear about me and have faith in me and be saved? No, it says exactly the opposite. It says, if you have faith in me and you spread the good news, you're going to
saved.
You're going to get spat on, beaten, or even killed. So don't expect some great ride, because that's not the promise. The promise is overcoming death through Jesus Christ. It isn't that it's not that everybody's going to get the same. Weird. Another aspect of collectivism that they love to keep pushing on people. Everybody should have the same. So demented. What are you going to do? People love it. They love their fake money train. They love their stimmy checks. They love their unemployment shit.
Yeah.
They love.
Well, you got a lot of people that think that religion is power.
Blame those people too much.
Well, you got a lot of people that think like a religion was originally originally created to provide fear into the general public and get control of them. A lot of people think that
it's it's an artifact of the period of time where the monkeys that turned into people were still really dumb.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they were the most advanced people in the world, building pyramids and freaking granite statues. You should see some of this granite artwork in some of these museums.
Oh, dude, and I love fucking some of these old school churches.
How ridiculous some of these stories about who made them and when and all of this shit. That they don't know shit. Oh, look, I dug up a rock billions of years. Shut up. The only way to have any assurance of how much time has passed between one moment and another is if you have a tradition of passing down accurate retransmittals of the same information over that period of time. Does digging a rock out of Antarctica tell you about meteorites from Mars?
The layers, right?
Nothing.
Isn't that what they say though? In geology, they analyze the layers of, you go to the core of the stone, you analyze each layer, and this was melted from lava X amount of years ago. I don't know. I want to say it has something to do with that though.
That kind of stuff, that is a complex of successive inferences generated by the misapplication of mathematics over many fields of inquiry. It is so insane. Like the idea that they took a picture of a black hole, the numbers of false inference and just misplaced belief in the capacity of observation to yield like truth about anything. These people, they're all insane. Nobody's ever taken a picture of a black hole. There are people out there demonstrating that
can a black hole get sucked up by another black hole?
No, there's no such thing. There are people doing work out there to demonstrate that the qualities of black bodies being assigned to things like stars, total fallacy. There's no legitimate way to transfer these observed properties in experiment, right? Lab experimentation, and translate those onto the surface of a star when they can't even agree on what the surface of a star is. Is it virtual, just a visual thing that we see? Is there actual material there? Is it condensed matter? Is it a gas? They don't know, because there is no way to go and sample it. All you can do is make these ridiculous series of mathematical inferences based on looking at how a black thing that gets heated up in a chamber radiates a spectrum. And then you can look at other types of experiments that actually force you to disclude their most accepted model, but they're all still running around using it. It's just so much contradictory garbage. Like another good one that I was pointing out with Jay upstairs earlier, having to do with the expansion of the universe.
As in the universe is never ending, it just keeps growing.
Well, not even just
expanding.
the part that it's expansive, but the whole Big Bang hyper expansion, the faster than light expansion of space at the beginning of the universe. So Hubble makes some observations and notices that he's picking up signals from these, I think it's type 1 supernovae is what they focus on. And he's getting these signals because type 1 supernova, it's always the same. It's basically one star vampirizing another star until it gets to a certain mass, and it's always at the same mass. So they can use it. It's like a standard pointer around the universe that when you see this frequency pattern, that's what it is. It's a type 1 supernova. It had to have this much mass. It's real brightness, like the intensity of the light being given off by it is a certain thing. And so if you can find these things, they're supposedly the best marker for how far away something is. And what he noticed is he's picking these things up and it's the right signal, but it's shifted, right?
Okay.
The wavelengths of light are longer than they're supposed to be. That's the red shift. And so you had the special relativity stuff going on previously, and they're working it out. And he's like, well, okay, well, they're moving away from us, the ones that are red shifted. And then every once in a while, they'd find one that was blue shifted. The shift actually went there. Well, those are moving towards us. And then they say, well, the more we look around for these, it's as if almost all of them are red shifted. Therefore, they're all moving away from us at whatever speed. And then they start observing the degree of the red shift. And they say, well, the further away they are, the more they're red shifted. So as you get further away from us, the faster they're moving away. Okay. So they come up with this whole, the expanding universe, or actually the Big Bang itself, right? The thing exploding and everything moving away.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Everything just keeps getting bigger.
Yeah. And since everything from the explosion, everything's getting further apart. Well, sure, even the stuff that was still moving out that was closer to the center than you would still appear to you to be moving away because you're out here and it's in there. So then with the change, with the observation that the speeds were greater the further away you got, they imposed this hyperinflation thing on the opening moments of the universe. So it's just a story that they concocted out of mathematics. That there's no
mathematical gymnastics.
The problem with all of this redshift stuff that I've discovered, because there are people doing all sorts of different projects, and the ones that present problems for their godless, materialist, billions of years bullshit are all thrown away. But they are observations. So why would you throw them away? The whole point of science is to accumulate observation for the purpose of making useful mathematical descriptions that grant you some predictive power. Although if you can't predict anything, what's the fucking point, right? That's why all the material science that goes into manufacturing stuff is useful. It's like, okay, which materials have the best conductivity? Well, I don't know. Let's make a little electric generator, connect the poles to either end of the thing and see what kind of current goes through it, blah, 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 blah. And this metal does this, blah, 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 and you got a whole list. Now you know what the most conductive metals are and the least conductive materials are. And you got a whole list. You've done some science. So now
science is easy.
Now when you make something like a radio or an automobile or whatever, you have all of these qualities of these materials that will lend themselves the best to making the thing. What do the billions of years and the infinite universe, what purpose does any of that serve? Well, we know better than the Bible, and God's not real. That's the only thing that serves. It doesn't grant us any power to seek any kind of truth. It's just an arbitrary mathematical inference that they argue about. It doesn't have any actual substance. See, making observations right now does not give us any power to make all of these statements about the deep past, because we don't even know if there was one.
Yeah.
It's pure arrogance. And people say, they'll say, well, why are you so arrogant as to say your Bible's the right religion? Well, because it's the most coherent thing that actually tells you how to treat other human beings.
But it's not backed up by science, Phil.
No, because truth isn't scientific. Actually, the scientific method itself defines it. It's internally self-defined as not truth. What does the scientific method tell you about what you're doing?
If it's true or not.
What it tells you is that if you form a hypothesis with a mathematical form and you carry out an experiment to control for variables to show that relationship holds, what you've done is demonstrate that physical reality within the confines of what you've done to do the experiment will follow that mathematical arrangement. But that's all it says.
Mm-hmm.
There's no truth in that. They're just valid relationships that you can use to do things with predictable results. But that's not ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is that unless there was some kind of mind that actually set the rules for everything to operate on, there'd be nothing for you to investigate.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the arrogance lies. That everything somehow, everything is moving around and behaving in ways that are dictated by all of these mathematical relationships, but that they just spawned out of nothing. When they know for absolute certain, the only thing that they can actually say about the concept of information is that it must come from a mind. A universe with no minds in it contains no information.
It's a good. I think that's a good way to end it there.
They just continue to operate as if things that they know don't have any impact on what they're doing. I don't know.
It goes back to all information comes from a mind, dude. I remember you fucking saying that I think over a year ago now, since when we first started this shit.
Mm-hmm. And if your mind is going to investigate information that makes everything conforms to, then that means there's an independent mind that pre-exists the material reality that we're observing. You can't form an alternative, logically coherent narrative about it. It's impossible. They keep trying to do it, but all they end up with is mathematical mumbo jumbo, and it doesn't mean anything. It's just math.
Yeah.
It's like people do novel math things all the time. It's constant. That people are so deep into multiple layers of ridiculous mathematical gymnastics. And every once in a while, something comes along in that whole mess that somehow applies to some kind of a scientific observation that's being made. And usually the people making the observations don't even know that the mathematicians are doing what they're doing. It happens decades later sometimes. I don't even know what was I even trying to say with that. So you want to wrap her up?
Yeah, wrap it up.
Let's do one.
About hour and 45 here.
Let's do a fun little closing thing here.
All right.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Uh-oh.
What are the top 2 conspiracy theories?
I would probably say, top 2 conspiracy theories. Fuck. See, that's weird. Now that you're asking me that, it's like I can't even fucking think of any. Well, right now, I'd probably say the canon shit. Q.
Oh,
QAnon. QAnon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as of right now, I'd say that's a top one.
All right.
And you know what? To ping off that again, the Pizzagate one for relevant conspiracy theories.
Those are the same. That's the same thing. QAnon is all about
QAnon
the
is
government
same thing.
prosecution
Yeah.
of the Pizzagate actors.
Right.
It's basically. Flat Earth is another good one.
I don't think that's as big anymore.
Oh, no,
I don't think that's as big anymore.
It's bigger than it's ever been.
Think so?
They stopped covering it because they knew that
It just got boring.
their nonsense narrative was being dissolved.
I would say QAnon for sure is probably the biggest one right now. That's still relevant.
Yeah, this is kind of a trick question. 'Cause, that's what I'm always going to do with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever going to give me the answer that I got.
Right.
So, number one conspiracy theory, the phrase itself.
The phrase itself, conspiracy theory.
Conspiracy theory is itself a conspiracy to
Martha says lizard people.
to make the general population discount the ideas that they slap that label on. So it's basically just a Scarlet A campaign. It's bullshit. Second top conspiracy theory, and what's funny is that since nobody puts the label on it, people continue to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the most damaging conspiracy theory ever created is collectivism. It's just that you're all stupid enough to believe that one.
Okay, here's another question. Here's a question for you. Is it really a conspiracy if everyone believes it?
Of course it is. Because it's
just well done.
It's logical. It's internally logically incoherent. Oh, okay. Let's do the itfy.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So, right? Collectivism leads to must have leader, right? Tribalism, and then towns and cities, and then states, and now nations, and blah 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 blah. Right? Everybody knows the bullshit narrative on how that all builds up. So today we live in a world where the way you feel should allow you to employ the government as a weapon against anyone who hurts your feelings. Right? Because you can ID as anything you want, and everybody else must be forced to comply with the way that you identify. And if they don't, they should be put in prison or knocked off social media or whatever. They should be ostracized in some way. They should be made to feel your pain. Collectivism.
Okay.
Combine that with this I can identify as anything bullshit. What if I told you it's possible to identify as something that makes that entire arrangement completely irrelevant, incoherent, invalid, whatever you want to call it?
I would like to know what it is you're identifying as then.
So would I.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate how easy it is to just completely invalidate the whole damn thing. Today, on the Doug Life podcast, I am going to begin identifying as an independent, tax-free entity.
Okay.
Therefore, the state must now provide an area that I will call the independent, tax-free area.
So you don't have to pay taxes anymore.
Otherwise, they are not complying with the way that I identify. And anybody who speaks against me needs to be put down. I mean, can you see how stupid this all is?
Yeah.
And it isn't the way that I identify, because that's the given. That's the given for actually reasoning about anything, starting with a single individual alone, because that's how you demonstrate physical reality, not by how do I take advantage of all the mopes walking around, these people that don't have any idea what's going on. How do I abuse other people to get what I want? That's not a starting point for reason. That's a preference for sociopaths. So I thought it was funny the other day. I was just thinking about it. It's like all of this ID politicking stuff and bringing down the weight of the state on anybody who opposes you. Well, you've presented a scenario where all I have to do is identify as something that wants nothing, that doesn't want the state to exist, to completely invalidate your entire position.
Well, no, you're going to have some people that listen to that and then be like, oh no, dude, you still have to pay taxes no matter what you identify as.
I don't actually listen to the scenario or anything about it. You're just stupid.
But it's like, it's like how I feel, and like you don't really get it. You don't listen to these people explain what they identify as. Count how many times they use the word like.
I like. Yeah.
No,
It's like,
seriously.
yeah. What's really amazing to me is that most of the people that would present that vehement opposition to this goofy little scenario that I presented, it's just a simple, straightforward, logical proof of stupidity, right?
Yeah.
That's all it is. Do you think I don't pay taxes? I mean, are you that stupid? No, see, that's just it.
You have
Is
to.
that the people that actually spend time thinking about how this shit doesn't actually function and how every time they present a new thing, it's just another way to serve you even less. We don't actually go out and burn anything down or hurt anybody. We just live through the bullshit and keep trying to tell people the truth about things in hopes that it penetrates enough minds that people might actually start behaving differently. But what would people rather do? They'd rather go along to get along, be cheerleaders for the most popular dipshit, vote in elections, and then weaponize the state against their neighbors.
America.
Somebody get back to us with how I'm the crazy one. Because all I've done is sacrifice my own time trying to actually gain enough to be able to speak to people in a way that can actually present something other than this just gargantuan mess of authoritarianism and what I want. It's the infinite want syndrome. Gimme, and you don't do shit. And we've got millions of these people ensconced all over the place. They don't serve anyone. They don't produce anything, but they get paid millions of dollars.
Well, after COVID, there's more than ever, dude. There's still people fucking riding that unemployment wave.
It's so gross. What do I know? I didn't jump on the unemployment bandwagon. I've actually set my life up where I don't need to make a lot of money to satisfy my monthly requirements, so that I don't have to be obsessed with how am I going to screw enough people to get enough money for my stuff. And if you can actually do it, it really is revealing.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, most of the people who are at the financial level that I'm at right now, as far as like monthly income and like the bills you gotta pay,
well, most people wouldn't be happy with
they're
your
just
bare minimum of living.
They're just sitting in their box. This like everybody else's fault. Just fucking you bunch of racists, or those people over in that neighborhood. They just fucking used up all the money on their park.
Fucking Trumpers.
It's everywhere you there isn't a single person looking inward trying to figure out anything about what they can do. It's just, why isn't everybody else doing more? It's really sick. But
It's sad, dude. It is.
So, Phil, what are you doing?
Just telling you the truth. All right, man. Hey, it was fun, dude. It's been a while. You got more beer in there or no? Cheers, man.
Cheers. It's good to spend some
I
time.
haven't got to sit down and chat with you in a while, dude, so it's good to be back. Marthalis, Anthony, everyone else who's hanging out with us tonight, dude. We appreciate you guys all.
Absolutely.
Yep. We'll be back. Hopefully, my work schedule's been a little different lately. We'll usually go live anywhere between Monday and Wednesday. I think it's a safe bet to say.
Yeah, the X Golf is closed Monday, Tuesday for now, so.
Yep. Everyone on YouTube, Facebook, we appreciate you guys all hanging out. We multi-stream, so if I'm ever shouting someone out and you guys don't see them on the chat, that's why.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Yeah, we'll get the professor back here soon, though. We got another live music stream here coming in a few weeks.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, mid-June, I believe the next one is.
Yeah, I got Florida trip coming up on the.
There you go.
13th,
You get
14th?
nice and tan.
Yeah, I got a little burn at the golf course a couple days ago. That one's starting to fade, but I have a little color when I get down there.
Well, until next time, then, everyone. I'm choosing Doug Life. Doug Life chose me.
Philly out.
Peace. Thanks for joining again. We'll be back soon.